Hooray, hooray, hooray. Okay, so we are starting our webinar with all these new buttons in Zoom. We're now broadcasting. It doesn't say start webinar, it says broadcast. So we're learning something today. Thank you everyone for joining this incredibly popular webinar. This is the second most popular webinar in the history of Grip. And it's the most popular in terms of questions. So well done you lot for being very emotional and submitting your questions for our lovely panelists. So what is today? Today is a webinar all about emotions, as I said. Disney, please don't sue us. We had a likeness to Inside Out with the characters. We got like the positive emotions, the negative emotions, the meh emotions. But the emotions are very, very intense when we go to events, as we all know. We have got some emotional experts on our webinar. So this is how to create more attendee emotion. So we all know that attendees are going to our events and they're having emotions, and this is driving action. And these emotions can be good, they can be bad, and they are sparking these kind of feelings that transforms these passionate attendees into passives, or maybe the other way around, passives into passionate. That's what we want. Ultimately, we want great attendees to love our experience and keep coming back. Now, the answer is, how do you do that? Well, I have got three absolute experts on attendee emotion today, and they are going to reveal the secrets about how they design experiences to really get to the heart of these emotions. How do we understand the emotions? How do we measure them? How do we deal with negative emotions? And what are those emotions? Oh, so emotional. Right, let's get cracking. So we have got Juraj Holub. He is the CEO and founder of Speaking Heroes. And we've got Liz Lathan, founder of Club Ichi and the Community Factory, two brilliant speakers. I won't lie, the prep call for this webinar was off the charts, and we have got so many questions to go through as well. So it's going to take us a while to get through all this good stuff, and you're in for a treat. Right, first of all, I'm going to go to Juraj. Please, Juraj, tell us a bit about you and tell us all about your emotional roller coaster.
Absolutely. Welcome, everyone. And Hugh, thank you so much for having me. I've been with the events industry for the roughly 15 years, 10 years with the Slido audience engagement app. So it was a lot about creating the connections between the speakers and the audience, and obviously creating the emotions along the way. And then for the past 3 years, I've been creating emotions within the participants as a moderator. I'm absolutely obsessed with creating strong moments and really powerful connections between people sitting in the audience. So I can't wait to share the experience of mine from both sides as somebody who worked at Slido as well as a moderator.
Fantastic. Great to have you here. Big fans of Slido. And Liz, over to you. Tell us a bit about you and your emotional journey.
Thanks, Hugh. So excited to be here. And with Juraj, this is going to be such a fun conversation. My name is Liz Lathan. I'm co-founder of Club Ichi, which is a private membership club for B2B event and field marketers. My background is event marketing. I grew up in Dell, IBM, all the corporate global event teams, and also on the association side for about 5 years. So creating from trade shows to large global conferences to field event programs, it is not just trying to connect salespeople to prospects. It is actually creating an environment for business to thrive. So now I run the Community Factory, which is our consultancy to help companies build more community at their events and engage people emotionally and cognitively and behaviorally so that business happens and relationships form. But Club Ichi is my jam. It's where we get together and talk about all this stuff.
Lovely. Thank you, Liz. Big fan of Club Ichi. I love it. It's great. And you work very hard to keep that community going and very engaged. So yeah, I love all of that. I've seen communities wither and die, but yours just keeps growing and growing. So be a part of that one. Right. We're going to start with a game. Oh, I love games, and I thought we could mix it up a little bit. So Liz, Juraj, this game involves put the emotion in the relevant bucket. So we've got three buckets. We've got pre-event, during event, post-event. I'm going to name an emotion, and the first one to tell me which bucket it goes in, pre, during, post, wins a prize. Okay, I've got boredom. Where does boredom go? Pre, during, or after?
During.
Yes, Liz, fantastic. Yeah, you nailed that one. And obviously, boredom could probably come from someone We've all seen people on their phones. They get a bit bored of the keynote and they're like, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to look at my phone. That's not the kind of emotion we want to inspire in our events. And I know you've got some good stories, both of you. Next one, anxiety. Where does that go?
Ooh, free.
Free.
I think Liz is smashing this, and you've won it again. Yeah, anxiety is and that comes down to the pressure to justify your time and expense of going to these events. Whether you bought a really expensive ticket, and some of them are very expensive. Maybe if you're a kind of sponsor or exhibitor and you've just bought an extremely expensive booth. Okay, last one. What should we go for? Inspiration.
For me, it's after.
After. Oh, wrong. It was during. No, you can have that. There are multiple right answers. And why? Why, Uri? Why after?
I think for me, it's about taking an action after what we have witnessed and experienced, right? So we get inspired, obviously, during the event, but it's mostly about what's going to happen after we experience those things in the event. So that's why I just shouted out after.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from there. I would have said during, because I've heard about this Bill Clinton keynote that we're going to talk about later, which is very exciting. But yeah, just to whet your appetite there, my fellow audience members. Right, let's crack on then. First question, you're right. What is attendee emotion? Why should we care about it?
I'll start with a personal take on the topic, and I think that's what we're here for. So for me, an attendee emotion is very directly correlated with the relationships that we build. Like if you think of your life, the relationships are, the single most important thing that we have. Like it's not the iPhones, it's not the cars, it's not anything that we are going to remember when we are 90 years old. It's actually the moments that we have with the close ones, with the friends, with our colleagues, with our beloved ones. And, think about it, like the events and the conferences, it's their reason of existence if we think about it. Yet we spend so little time actually on building and creating the opportunities for building the relationships. Let me give you an example of what building relationships in events actually mean to me, and I'll share a story of mine. It was 2014 Copenhagen, my very first industry conference. A lot of people, 200 people from the EU and US actually gathered in one place. And we were there to try new formats, to change things, to challenge the status quo. The formats were brilliant. The speakers were brilliant. But honestly, one thing that I always come back to, it's the relationships that I built over those two days. And some of you might be actually on the call, on the webinar today. Miguel Neves, Martin Van Este, Dominika Fudala, Janja Pindermauer, which is great. One thing that is absolutely crazy is that I'm still in touch with all these people and I can call them actually my friends. And they have totally transformed the way I see events. They have transformed my career. And to me, that is at the core of attendee emotion. So the question for us as event planners, community managers, moderators, speakers is this: how can we create more moments where these relationships could be built?
Yeah, and those relationships you say link to an emotion, don't they, really? Which is kind of belonging, connection. There's a lot of good stuff there. And what I haven't appreciated, and I think you're completely right, is those emotions aren't just linked to that event and shortly after. It's like for the rest of your life. So yeah, events can change your life. Fantastic. Right. Thank you for that. Liz, coming over to you then. So you've done some research, haven't you, around this, and you've looked at more hard-edged in terms of, these attendees, a lot of them are coming to B2B shows to buy. And you've done some research on that. It'd be lovely for you to unpack that a little bit for us. on the webinar?
Yeah, the big question was, we keep hearing all this research that 95% of decisions, purchasing decisions, are made based on emotion. No one buys a Ferrari because it was a good deal. You buy it because it gives you status, because it makes you feel a certain way. And you then justify it with logic. Well, it was the end of the year model, so, it wasn't as expensive as next year's. So but it's the emotion first. So we were trying to figure out, though, what emotion is it that actually drives this reasonable reason to go make a purchasing decision, right? Like what is it? So our theory was, especially in an event environment, that's what we're trying to do. How do you craft an event that is going to build a buying environment? And we figured it was happiness. If you can make people happy, if they're all smiling and having a good time, then you've got a great environment. Turns out we were completely wrong. It's 5 emotions that you actually have to evoke in your environment. And it turns out that it's a beautiful blueprint for how you can craft your events. But we call our acronym is HAM with 3 A's, because it's like emotions bring home the bacon. So it's hopeful, adventurous, active, accepted, and motivated. So hopeful and motivated, you asked in the beginning about inspiration and where that fits. And I would put inspiration in the during, but motivated is what you want at the end, because you want them to leave with a reason to go do something. Hopeful, you want to start at the beginning. They're coming to this event so that they feel like there's hope for a better tomorrow from the connections or the content that they get from your program. But it's the 3 A's in the middle that most of us forget to evoke during our event. Number 1 is acceptance. So for me, the biggest emotion as a human going to an event is to feel like I belong there. I'm with my people. This is where I want to be. And we oftentimes make that registration experience a touchless environment. Oh, don't worry, you don't have to stand in line. You just go to a kiosk. Well, now you just completely made me feel isolated and alone as your number 1 welcoming moment. How can we change that? How can we make it like a regiception and have this environment for connection first off? The second one is active. If you have created an entire event that I could just have watched on YouTube, then I didn't need to go there. I could have just stayed home. So make people be an active part of the content, whether it's them getting to speak or share or converse, have conversations, or just being not just like puppy yoga or the 6 a.m. walk, but being part of the content creation. And then the last A that no one does at their events anymore is adventure. How do you get people out of their comfort zone? And that doesn't mean they have to go skydiving, but is there something that could happen just changing up the format to make people lean in? Like people are changing their keynotes to do the hot ones challenge, where you have to eat progressively hotter chicken wings while answering questions. And the audience wants to see the person crying at the end and trying to answer a real business question. It's hilarious and it's awesome. And those little shifts make the thing more interesting. So when you can craft with those 5 emotions, you can drive business because you've created that environment where people did engage. The crazy part is those 5 emotions also are dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, happiness.
Yeah, they're all the happiness hormones. I love that. That's fantastic. You're right. I'm going to come to you in a sec and ask you a bit about how you put this sort of stuff into practice, because I think a lot of people on the webinar want to hear that. And I think, Liz, you've touched on a few things there. I've always wanted to do a Hot Wings Challenge webinar. That would be wicked.
Let's do it. We have to do this.
Okay, let's have a follow-up one early next year. We'll get a delivery sent to both of you, and we'll have another.
Just don't make me do the 1 chip challenge, because I've heard terrible things about that one.
Yeah, we'll only send you the hottest, spiciest ones, and you're right now how I super mild. Anyway, regiception. That is a new word. That's fantastic. We just launched our grip glossary with loads of event tech words. I'm going to put that one in. Regiception. Tell us about regiception. Why is that important? Because I think registration can often create lots of negative emotions for people. It does for me and several events I've been to in previous years. So why focus on that as an element to turn it into?
It's your welcome moment. I mean, it's the moment when the doors open, and it's your opportunity to set the stage, make people feel like they're in the right place, welcome them. I mean, what do you do when someone comes to your house for a dinner party? Do you just tell them to come on in and you ignore them? No, you welcome them in, you take their coat, you offer them a drink, you make them feel at home, and then you go back to cooking. And maybe you get them involved. Maybe you ask them to chop something up. Maybe this is what we should be doing at the beginning of our events. I saw Swugo, when they did their unconventional or whatever their conference was last year, they started with this regiception. And so they had me and Nicole doing kind of a spontaneous think tank crowdsourcing thing. First thing, so people walk in, there's music playing. We're asking them, hey, what do you hear? What are your biggest challenges you want to solve while you're here? And people are putting stuff on the wall. Yes, they're going and getting their badge, but there's also drinks being handed out. And it just felt like it started with a party. People connect immediately before they go into the main session. It's fantastic.
I love that.
Yeah,
The stabilization of the registration queue. Brilliant.
Mhm.
Let's do more of that. You're right. What sort of things have you seen? Practical tips and things that event organizers have been doing to imbibe, really great emotions into their events.
absolutely. And Liz, totally love the idea that you just mentioned. And I would love to actually build on that. So there is the registration as one of those welcome moments, but there is another one when we are about to take the curtain up or pull the curtain up, right? Like it's those first 5 minutes when the event actually starts. And if you take a look at many of those beginnings of the conferences, it's just like, okay, welcome everyone. Let me, guide you through some housekeeping notes, or let's give a big hand for our sponsors. It's such a wasted opportunity, right? Like you have 5 minutes of absolutely the maximum, the full attention, the fullest of the full attention of your participants, and then you wasted basically on spelling out the sponsors. Nothing against sponsors, they're really important. But once again, what I see or what I like to do from the moderator's perspective is to basically create that moment of connection. So obviously, I welcome everyone, but then I tell people to stand up and introduce themselves to a couple of people that sit next to each other. And what happens, and you can pair it exactly with a question such as, okay, what is the biggest challenge you are facing right now? What was the motivation for you to come to this conference? What is the trend that you are seeing in your given field? Whatnot, right? But this like you are going to achieve two or three things. First of all, you are going to signal to the audience, okay, this conference will be different. I want to interact with you. And you're going to switch them from the passive to active mode straight off. Second thing, you are going to help them build new relationships, new connections straight off. Again, coming back to the short story I shared a few moments ago. And third, last but not least, again, they can have meaningful conversations with one another about what's going to happen. So, building on what Liz said, do not waste this first 5 minutes of the conference or an event on housekeeping notes. Like, really bring the audience in as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's linked to some research that I saw where, humans crave newness. It's the novelty. We love it, and that releases the dopamine. So if you go into an event expecting the same old stuff, but you get something completely different, like you were both saying there, that will release the dopamine. It will make us happier, which is all about these emotions that we're trying to get out of our lovely audience. Right.
Very quick
Let's dig in
point.
a bit because you're right.
Okay.
You talked about experiments before, didn't you? I quite liked that angle because you were saying that you like to run experiments with your attendees in live. I mean, that's pretty ballsy.
Uh, I do. I love getting the audience to actually do something. So, as a moderator, I'm absolutely obsessed with getting the audience to do something. But this time, it was at the marketing conference in April, and I was running a public speaking workshop or slash the presentation. Actually, it was not a workshop; it was a presentation. Imagine there were almost 1,000 people in the audience. Before that, I did these kind of activities, which I'm going to describe shortly, with 20 people, 30 people. And there I had a full hall of almost 1,000 people. And I thought, okay, let's give it a try. So, and I love the audience to try and experiment with their voice. We have a beautiful, range. And yet we do not use it to our full potential. So I created a short game that they had to open in pairs, and they have to improvise for about 1 minute and then change the voice, the volume of their voice based on the number that is actually shown on their screen. So 5, that's your normal volume. If you are going to see on screen number 2, then you have to start to whisper. If you're going to get 9, you can go all the way up. So imagine you have 1,000 people sitting looking at you, and you want to do an exercise like that. And it's like, okay, you know what? Let's just do it. So I told people to scan the QR code, open the app, pair up, and just do a 1 minute presentation for one another and play with their voice. Massive experiment, potentially with a big flop. Luckily, it was a massive success. Everybody just like started experimenting, improvising. The whole basically audience started doing this, and it turned out to be one of the most memorable presentations, which I was very happy about. And I love that. I love that moment of seeing people overcoming their fears, of doing something. And if you overcome your fear, if you step outside of your comfort zone, it goes very much hand in hand with releasing, exactly as you said, Liz, the dopamine, right? And that creates a positive emotion, and people are all pumped up. So this was one of the examples that I've done recently that turned out to be rather successful.
Well done.
Love it.
That's very good. It makes my little game we did at the beginning just, I could have amped it up more if I had 1,000 people and did something really, really crazy. You give me inspiration, you're right. Liz, tell me a bit about attendee engagement, because you've looked at 3 different types, haven't you, of attendee engagement, which I thought was really fascinating, and how they actually are implemented in the real world in specific event use cases. If you can tell us about that, that'd be fascinating.
The number one question that I get all the time is, how do I increase engagement at my event? Which is a terrible question, because I don't know what that means. What do you mean by engagement? Do you want more social media shares? Do you want more people taking pictures? Do you want the executive at the end to tell you that he was happy on stage and it looked like a full room? Like, what is engagement? So I try to break it down with people and ask them, are you looking for cognitive engagement? You want people to learn something or remember something? Are you looking for behavioral engagement? Do you need them to do something, let you scan their badge, or complete something for you? Or do you need them to feel something? You're trying to build an event that is brand loyalty, build a movement, do something along those lines. Then you can start identifying what it is. If it's a sales kickoff, it's probably cognitive engagement that you want. You want the sales teams to know what's coming, how to use it, how to sell it, and you want to maybe quiz them on that. So that's kind of a way to measure these things. If it's behavioral engagement and you want them to book a meeting, book a demo, let you scan their badge, do something along those lines, then you can craft an experience in your booth or at your event to capture those things, to make people willing to exchange their contact information for whatever it is that you're doing for them. And if it's emotional engagement, well, now we can craft this experience. If you need to drive loyalty, can you create this movement? Does everybody get the same shirt to wear at the same time? Or is it a costume event, where everyone gets to dress up and feel like part of something? So, figuring out exactly what to do. Now you can set engagement metrics around it.
Yeah, because unless you know what you're optimizing for, you're blindly just trying to optimize everything.
Right. You know what they say, if you chase 2 rabbits, both will escape, right? So like, you pick your rabbit and go after it.
Yeah, more rabbits or more traps? I'm not sure, but I like the rabbit analogy.
One rabbit, pick one rabbit.
One rabbit, of course. One rabbit, one trap. Okay, so I'm going to get into some of the questions, because as I say, we could spend 24 hours on these questions. There's some great ones. You're right. I'm going to give you a question. I'm going to let you think about it while I give everyone a message from the sponsor. So the question is, and this one I think could be quite good for you, given your moderation experience. How do you organically build engagement in quieter rooms? So you've got a really quiet room, everyone's a bit subdued. It's really scary to go in there and get people to amp up and do all of that. So I'd love to know how you do that. So that's a question for one of our participants. In the meantime, while you're coming up with it, I'm going to share this, which is a message from our sponsor. And again, the sponsor is Grip. Hooray! We are the sponsor. And we say there is another webinar coming up next month, 24th of September. Please scan that QR code, because it's all about the right ingredients for crafting your perfect participant experience using measurement and data. Now, I know some people are like, oh, data, boring, not as exciting as this talk, all about, emotions. But actually, we've got loads of data out there now, and it's all at everyone's fingertips. So all we need to do is connect the dots. And we've got 2 fantastic panelists. Again, not as good as Liz and Juraj, but don't tell these guys that. I will say the opposite next month, by the way, guys. We've got Chloe from Event Tech Leaders, and we've got Aid Allenby as well from Allenby Consulting, XRX, and lots of other big brands, all about data, how you can shape this experience by understanding, measurement, really measuring what your attendees want. And I think that comes back to, what we're talking about today, which is measurement of emotions. So I'd love to get into that a bit later on. How do we measure people's emotions? How do you start? Okay, you're right. Let's talk about quieter rooms. How on earth do you start to build engagement when no one wants to talk, everyone's sitting in the corners, people are on their phones? What do you do?
I love this question. And folks, I come from a really tough background. I come from Central Europe. And if you enter the room and ask people a question and you ask them to provide you with some comments, there are crickets. Like nobody wants to do that. Like it's a really, really tough crowd to work with. But I cracked the code, honestly. I know I learned after many painful actually experiences how to actually do that. And the secret to it is that you have to divide the whole group. You have to split them into smaller groups or into pairs. There's no magic to it. Let's forget about the technology for a moment, all the Slido and what other audience engagement tools. Let's forget about it for the moment. So the secret to working with the quiet participants is pairing them up or creating small groups and giving them a tiny assignment or a question to discuss or a statement to discuss. For example, for the past 2 or 3 years, AI has dominated all the conversations. So let's use that as an example. So the conference is on the AI and how we use it at work. Okay, so before you open it up for the next speaker as a moderator or even as a speaker yourself, you can pair people up and tell them to discuss, okay, what AI tools do you work in your job and how? And don't ask that question to the entire room. They will not raise their hand and answer it. Just give them 2, 3, 4 minutes to discuss that question in pairs. And only then ask them if there are any volunteers to share their experience, to share their comments. And if there is no one who wants to share his or her experience, that's okay because the conversations already happened. They had a good conversation in pair or in a small group. They shared some good insights, and that's beautiful. And you can build on that by asking the volunteers to participate further. Or if you are using a technology, Slido and whatnot, you can crowdsource all that input and display it on the big screen. But the secret to getting the quiet audience to actually participate is creating a safe space in pairs or in the small groups and giving them a tiny assignment, question, or a statement. Works every single time, no matter the size of the group, no matter the cultural background, no matter whether they are introverts or extroverts.
Brilliant. Wise words there. I'm going to do that next time I run an event. Yeah, break it up into small groups. Excellent.
And then I'll throw in there, if you don't want to go content. So one of the experiments that I tried that now I do for all of the times I get invited in to speak in a room, because generally I'm not the opening speaker. I'm somewhere after lunch where people have just sat there all day long. So I have everybody in the room stand up and we play a game of rock, paper, scissors. So you're going to pair up with somebody, you're going to Rochambeau, and the loser must cheer on the winner. So as they start whittling down, losers are cheering louder, winners are getting fewer and fewer. You finally land in that final last two, the whole room is cheering, and then there's a winner and everybody screams, and now we start the presentation. So bring that energy back up, let people have a moment of activity and some fun, and then of course the presentation can't be boring after that.
Love that, Liz.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, rock, paper, scissors. Brilliant. And I think at a recent event, I think Human X, they used our smart badges, and it was Kamala Harris was her keynote, and the MC said to a whole audience of thousands of people, turn to the person next to you. You've now got your smart badges, digital hardware badge. You press a button and it blinks and it connects the two people, and so you get their contact details in your app later on. And so they got everyone to turn to the person next to them rather than just say something random and be really awkward. So no, just touch your badges. And that then got them talking about, oh, the badges, they're pretty cool. So yeah, there are multiple ways to catch that rabbit.
I think the other one, just for the person who asked the question, it is, don't have boring, quiet breakout rooms. Put music in them. Put little speakers in there. It is the worst thing ever. And yes, everybody's super quiet when you walk into the room and the room is quiet. It's like a freaking library. Have a little vibe. Tell people that this is going to be exciting.
Well, that gets on to the next question where someone said, how does food and beverage play a role in creating connections? And does food and beverage actually result in better retention? Do people come back to your event? I think just, chucking food and beverage in somewhere doesn't automatically work, does it? But you've got to be quite strategic with it.
Well, all of our Club Ichi events, when we do a spontaneous think tank, the opening meal is family style, because I believe that food and beverage is where we break bread together. It's how we start to form relationships. And so our events are under 150 people. So we have the opportunity to do that kind of experience. They come to the table, the food descends upon them, they start passing these to each other, and relationships form. So I firmly believe in that. When you've got a 10,000 person conference, you can't do that. But those moments of experiential breaks, like we did an event that there's a company in Austin called Bananarchy that has, they take bananas, they like roll them in either chocolate or peanut butter or whatever, and then so the afternoon snack is watching a bunch of people be really uncomfortable trying to figure out how to eat this banana without looking weird. And they're all laughing about it, taking pictures of each other. It's hysterical. So like, think about these moments that create connection.
I just wish I'd stomp banana now and I'll bring it up and anyway, that would have been good. I love that. So that's the first time we've had bananas raised in a webinar. Brilliant. That's a world record, along with the number of people on this webinar right now. So that's food and beverage. I love this one from Gary at KHL. This one's really good. So any tips or ideas for making B2B conferences more memorable? So you guys must have been to a lot of B2B conferences in your time. And Juraj, you said, the people you met made it very, very memorable. So I guess one of those is get the right people in the room at the first place and ensure that those meetings are facilitated in the right way, using the best event app in the world. What other could be great? What other ideas have people got? Liz, what have you seen? Maybe things you've done yourself or shows that you've seen that have done it very, very well for making B2B, could be dry B2B topics, but very memorable.
Yeah, I think you're right, spot on. It's less about content consumption, more about conversation creation. So the opportunities you have to let people meet and converse in facilitated ways and in spontaneous collisions, I think really drives memorable moments. But if you can punctuate those by creating micro events in the larger event, so smaller groups of people can get together and actually create connection while doing stuff. Maybe you take them off site. Maybe there's something happening in the city that the event is in, and you've got sponsors taking people to mini events. Even the old school restaurant dine-arounds where people get a gift card and they meet with other people and get to have dinner, like those, taking 10,000 people and bringing them into smaller groups makes that memorable, because it is about the people. It's not really about the concert. Yeah, you're going to remember the concert, but which event was that at? I went to 40 events in the last 10 years. I don't remember where I saw Maroon 5, like whatever.
Yeah, 100%. And let me just build on what Liz said. And there's one thing that I lack very often in the B2B conferences, and it's the humor, right? The entertainment. And we all think that, okay, B2B conferences need to be boring. No, they don't need to be boring. They can be rather fun and entertaining. And I love the term edutainment, right? Like education and entertainment. And if you are able to find the speakers who can combine the two, that the content is valuable and they can deliver it in a really cool way, in a fun and humorous way, you are winning. Like, people are, sick and tired of sitting, and listening to a stream of presentations on generic topics, And one, actually, such a speaker comes to my mind. His name is Klaus Rastet. And he was delivering, are you familiar with him? Folks, I see you were all
He was interviewed for our recent event badges reports. There you go.
Yeah. So he's such a
with
cool
his
guy.
famous Batman suit.
Exactly. I wanted to say, like, he loves wearing a Batman suit, right? And he loves talking about authentic experiences. He rarely uses any slides, yet the audience, listens to every single word that he says. And I think this kind of a speaker can bring, spark, novelty, a little bit of controversial statements, and that's what you want at the end of the day, right? Like, to be perfectly honest, out of those 10 presentations, most of the audience members are going to remember Klaus instead of a CEO, to be perfectly honest, right? But what I'm trying to say over here is that we don't have to be so stiff. We can just bringing some speakers who can bring humor, entertainment, and ideally combine the two, education and entertainment.
I want to go to a B2B conference where everyone's dressed as a superhero. That would be amazing. I know
well, that's the secret behind Klaus, is that it's not an actual Batman suit. It's a suit with the Batman logo all over it. So when he tells you look for the guy in the Batman suit, you're like trying to find the guy in the and then you see him and you're like, oh, I see what you did there. It's fantastic.
Okay.
But also, like, rethink. I would love to add in there, rethink what a conference is. Like in 2019, we did a business event. It was the world's first secret business trip, where we invited 80 experiential marketers to meet at JFK, bring a passport, pack for 6 days, 65 degrees. We told them nothing else. When they got there, we revealed that we'd chartered a plane to Tuscany, and we whisked them away for this 6-day spontaneous think tank, truffle hunting, pasta making. It's a business event, though. And of the conversations we've tracked after that, over $45 million in business was done among the people on that trip. And it was only 80 people. So like, why does it have to be in a ballroom? Why does it have to be at a conference center? Like, rethink how you're planning business events.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm all for that. Let's just make it more innovative, which links back to these dopamine receptors in our brain. Yeah, we'll be a lot happier with that sort of stuff happening, not the old boring types. Right. Okay, we've had a couple of questions in. One from an anonymous attendee. I love this webinar. We love you too. Would it be possible to get a recording afterwards? Thank you. Yes, everyone gets a recording. You get a recording. You get a recording. Everyone who's watching it gets a recording, but they've already got the recording. What's going on? It's a bit meta. And then we've got Rachel as well, who says she's talking about conferences with small numbers. Say you haven't got many people turned up, but you've got to deliver for your sponsors and exhibitors. You know, you've got to make sure that they're getting the most out of it, but they're saying it's not as busy as usual. So what do we do around engagement and emotions to keep them happy? Because I think this is starting to veer into the territory of negative emotions and what happens there. And I'd love to get into that a little bit. So Liz, I know you're kind of an expert at the kind of event marketer side of things. So as an event marketer, you must have done events for you or your clients where it's not as good and it's not as busy as you thought it would be. How does an event organizer come back from that? How do they deal with that to make sure that you've got something of value from that event?
So some of this comes down to your speakers and their ability to understand how to manage the room. When I was at Dell, we had an executive summit, and there's multiple breakout sessions happening, and one's really popular and 3 aren't as popular. And so you got one room that's completely packed, and then you got the other rooms with 5 or 6 people in them. And as I was going through to make sure rooms were going okay, I saw one room with 10 people in it and the speaker, and then the other room that had about 6 or 7 people in it and the speaker. And watching what both of them did changed everything. So the one with 10 attendees in the room, he was all ego, and he, by gosh darn it, was going to stand on stage and deliver his presentation because that's what he was ready to do. And he didn't change it and he didn't alter it. And those people in the room were kind of like on their phone and not really paying attention. Meanwhile, the one that had 6 or 7 people in the room stepped off the stage, pulled up a chair, turned it into a circle, and had a conversation with those 7 people. And it was the most engaged looking room, and they were all leaning in, and it was incredible. So making sure that your speakers and your exhibitors know how to engage humans and not have to be in that kind of what I call ROE, return on ego moment, where they must stand there and feel like they get their moment in the spotlight.
That is amazing. I love that.
I love this example, Liz, and let me actually elaborate on that. And this is such an effective tactic, how to make even that small number of people interact with one another. Again, from the moderator's perspective, something similar happened to me. Towards the end of the conference, 5 p.m., you might gonna have, if it's not very engaging conference, 20-30% of the audience like you had in the morning. And what you're gonna do with that? And it was at one of the industry conferences, and about 20-30 people stayed in the room. And we still had the last panel discussion. And what I did as a moderator, I told everyone, okay, scattered around the room, okay, please stand up, grab your chair, and let's just create this kind of a semicircle. And let's create this kind of an intimate environment when we can share, we can listen to the speakers, where we still have this kind of a group feel. And it was amazing. So I think from the moderators or speakers' perspective, put your ego aside. These things happen. You will not be speaking to a full room every single time. You should consider a full room to be a huge privilege. Seriously, it's a big privilege to be speaking to a full room. There will be a moment, no matter how hard they will be to your ego, to your soul, you have to cope with that. And I think you still have to keep in mind that you still have 5, 10, 15 people that stayed just to listen to you and be there for you, and you should be there for them and adapt in the real time. And again, by acting in the moment, creating this kind of an intimate environment, that can really save a day. And for many of those people who stayed, could be one of the strongest moments of the entire conference. That's when you become vulnerable and when they can really open up to you as well.
Absolutely. And don't feel like the furniture is tied down. You can move the furniture. I was in one room that had like a U shape for 40, and there were 8 people that showed up. So we just pulled 2 of the tables together next to each other and had our own little table. Like, why? That's like, you can move stuff, except in a union facility. Make sure you get permission.
Absolutely. And Liz, just one more, one more thing, because I'm super passionate about this topic, as you can see. Just jump off the stage. Jump off the stage. If you have 10 people sitting in a large room, hop off the stage and join them in the audience. Or like, don't have this kind of a physical distance, you standing above them. No, join them at their level, right? This is not a presentation you to 200 people. This is a conversation peer-to-peer, eye-to-eye. So even these kind of a small things can make a drastic difference.
Yeah.
Great.
Hugh, most of the questions that I see in the Q&A right now, I'm so excited about. Let's get into
we're going to get into them. We're going to get into them. I just wanted to follow up and say that I think a lot of this also comes back to like organizers empowering the speakers and the people involved in the event to do that sort of stuff. Because I think sometimes I spoke at events and you just feel it's very straitjacketed. You don't really get a brief, and like to feel like if someone tells you, right, you can do whatever you want, you can do this, here's some examples, like, I feel empowered to do whatever I want and be a bit more creative. And sometimes you need to be given that brief right at the beginning. Which I always say, shit in, shit out. If you give someone a bad brief, you're going to get bad stuff out the other end. Right, let's have a look at some of these questions. So, anonymous attendee number 600. We are hosting a large-ish event, 1,000 people. We have no panel discussions and no keynote. We only have roundtable breakout and small group discussions. I love that. That's my favorite sort of event. It's quite different. How should we communicate that with people in the opening so people embrace this new concept / way of organizing an event? Right, I'm going to come to you first, Liz, because I know you're dead keen on this one.
I absolutely love it. And I think that if you can have that moment, first set the tone, whether it's at a dinner or whenever your registration is that you bring people together, set the tone as almost party vibe, right? Make sure people know this is collaborative, this is fun. If there's any opportunity to do moments of kind of that family style feel, even if you can't do family style for 1,000, where that there's stuff on the table and people have to come together, that's incredible. And or I like to use these big sticky notes, the 6x8, get the Post-it brand, the other ones fall right off the wall. But as they're coming in, ask them, hey, what challenge are you here to solve today? And fill a wall or a window with the wall of woes, everybody's challenges. And then start asking people while they're in there together and the popcorn's popping, right? They're putting all the things up there. If you see a problem that you've solved in your business, add your name to that sticky note. So now people start to connect and go, oh my gosh, I need to talk to that person. I got to find that one. Have you seen that? And so you're going to have this moment where they're already feeling like they're contributing and giving and receiving from something. And that's going to set your tone. And then what we do, we call it a spontaneous think tank. We actually create the roundtables out of those challenges people put on the walls. And if somebody has said that they have solved that challenge, then we'll tap them and say, would you mind leading a roundtable discussion on this? And so then we can put signs up saying, we're going to now run the session. Bob's going to tell you exactly how we solve this problem, and it becomes very collaborative. But if you've already got your group discussion topic set, that's totally fine. Doing the wall of woes starts the connection moment.
Excellent. What would you contribute to that, Juraj? So you're nodding away.
So first of all, Liz, where do I sign that? Agree with everything what you said. Awesome, great stuff. I would elaborate on a few points actually over there. Again, facilitated as a moderator. I love the moment of crowdsourcing the challenges, and you can make it a part of the agenda as well. So it can be done as you described, Liz. Love the idea of this kind of a not digital and analog way of connecting the participants. At the same time, if you have a blank space, sort of, so to speak, in your agenda, or you have just the slot, the block for the roundtables and not really defined topics that people will be discussing, you can make the crowdsourcing of the topics / challenges a part of the agenda. So at the start or at a given moment in the agenda, you can say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are a group of people. We didn't want to impose any challenges and topics onto you because you know the topics you want to be discussing, the challenges that are the most painful to you. So once again, let's just post them to Q&A app or whatever polling app that you are actually using, and bring them up on the screen and get the audience to upvote the most painful ones. And in a few moments, you're going to have a list of the topics/challenges that have been crowdsourced by the audience. And not only that, also prioritized by the audience. And you can pick top 5, top 10, and assign them at the roundtables. And you will be sure that the topics that people will be discussing will be really hitting the nail, right? They will be very, very, very relevant for your audience. And just to circle back to the original question, I want to really congratulate you on being brave enough to having the courage actually to pull off this type of event for 1,000 people. So I tip my hat, even though I'm not there.
Yeah, and I would like an invitation to that event. That sounds amazing.
Same. I'm coming. I've already got my invitation. So we've got the second question, which kind of, I think, maybe is answered, where we say they don't have an event app, not for matchmaking, but what creative ways can they do to facilitate matchmaking without a digital app?
I have ideas for this too. You go first, Juraj.
Okay, so a quick one. All right, a quick one over here. So create a voluntary facilitated networking session. So how that looks is that you are going to book, let's say, 30-minute slot during the lunchtime or after lunchtime. And you need a moderator who is going to facilitate that for you. So you're going to have, if it's going to be a voluntary, you can expect about 20 to 30%, 20 to 30% of people actually showing up, which is totally fine. So you're going to have people showing up in the room. You are going to open it up by saying something like, "Okay, welcome everyone. In the upcoming 30 minutes, you're going to meet at least 5, 6, 7 new people." How it's going to work is as follows. So there will be, for example, 5 rounds. Each round will be 4 minutes long. You go and approach somebody who you don't know yet, introduce yourself, and here is a conversational starter for you. For example, and you can put up on the screen the conversational questions such as, okay, what type of project are you currently working on? What trend are you seeing in your industry? What are you most proud of that you achieved in the past 12 months, etc., 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 right? And you're going to measure that round. Once the 5 minutes are up, you can use a gong to signal the end of the round, and you move on to the next one. Believe me, this is such a fun way. People love that. It's not forced. If it's voluntary, only those who want to meet other people are going to join. And you are going to give people framework and permission to approach people whom they don't know yet.
Love it. What about you, Liz? What have you...
Okay, so I have this idea that is like the analog version that I like to call the human library. So ask your participants to write something they're an expert at and put it up on a bulletin board, old school bulletin board, so people can check people out for 10, 15 minutes and just have these conversations with folks. And if you can create this cafe feeling environment with the coffee cart and all the things and let people come in and check someone out. So it's like brain dates, but you don't need the tech. Do this in an analog way. Another one is if you have a world map or US map or wherever your event is, and let people write their name and their company or something and then tag up like where they're from, and you start getting those kind of geographical spectrograms of where people are. So you're like, oh my gosh, you're in my part of the world, let's connect. So what are some of those more analog ways you can get people connecting and feeling like they're in elementary school again?
I mean, love the human library.
Hey, that's a cool name for it. I mean, look, I love a bit of analog, but I do work for these guys. So we know that the future is, 10x better if you use technology. So tell me a bit about how we can use technology, because there's a question that's coming from the audience that says, what are some ways that event tech can be used to help amplify attendee emotion? How do we measure and how can we report that to stakeholders? So I think this is a really important point around measuring emotion. How do we actually measure it, and how do we maybe use technology to help us do that?
I think the biggest thing is the technology needs to assist and not get in the way. I can't remember what event it was, but I just read an article that somebody implemented almost forced AI networking that basically matched people by their interests that they had put in during registration and then forced a meeting schedule upon them, having matched them. And the people revolted so heavily that like no one showed up for anything, and they just disabled that portion of the app because it was so intrusive to them. So I think when you have an opportunity to have technology that's going to let people opt in, choose, and make decisions for themselves, but help them connect, that is really the target. That's where we're trying to go with these things.
Yeah, it's got to be about recommendations, hasn't it? And not, forcing people to do this stuff, because that's not going to work. Juraj, what about you? What about technology to measure emotions?
So I'll just share a few moments from my Slido days, and it's about how you are going to use, for example, the polling tool. Now I'll talk about Slido, but you can use any other tool that is out there. So some of the most emotional moments that I have experienced is we're tied to a very personal stuff. And on a personal sharing. And let me give you an example. It could be really in a community event, or it could be your internal meeting slash event, but asking people to type in their personal highlight of the past month, of the past quarter, of the past couple of months can turn out to be an incredibly emotionally charged moment. Let me give you an example. If you ask people, what was your personal highlight of the past year? People are starting to type in, okay, my marriage, my second daughter was born. Maybe not really a highlight, but a strong moment, depends on how you are going to frame that. Somebody passed away, and you can open up if you've got this kind of environment, especially in the internal team. If it's a big conference, then obviously not. But I got the promotion, I got a new job, and all these kind of things. And if you see all those amazing things that did happen to people, displayed on the big screen, you can see how much good stuff happened to us, right? Like people, we tend to forget how blessed we often are in our lives, but seeing it, typed in and in front of us, that creates a really strong emotion. And once again, if you pair it up with a face-to-face or live sharing, if somebody, stands up and share the why and the details behind their highlights, that's when the magic happens, and you can almost feel that energy in the room, right? So these moments could be beautifully facilitated by technology, but exactly as Liz said, they should be facilitated by the technology. The technology shouldn't be the main component forcing people to do X and Y.
Yeah,
and I want to go back to what you're talking about here with the measuring of this stuff. Like you're saying that what are you measuring? If you are measuring behavioral engagement and you're using an app, you're using Grip, you're using another app that's doing event networking or meetings, the behavior is how many networking meetings were set up, how many actual one-on-one scheduled meetings were pre-scheduled or happened at the event. So these are metrics within engagement you can measure. Now, if we're talking about emotion and you've got integrated in the app social sharing, you can obviously do social listening. You can have the AI tools give you sentiment analysis of the conversations that are happening. So there are a lot of ways. You can even go into this AI facial recognition thing, and it can give you that sentiment analysis too. I wonder about those though. I haven't really dug into it because a lot of my events are very conversation based. And I find that when people are deep in conversation, they more have resting bitch face than I'm really happy face. So how does that analysis really work? I think you got to find the baseline and figure out what does engagement mean versus smiling people mean. But I think there are so many tools, and that is where technology can help you measure emotional engagement.
Absolutely. And Liz, you were talking about cognitive engagement, if I'm not mistaken. So once again, if you're using engagement tool, you can take a look at how many questions were posted. What was the sentiment? Positive, negative, neutral, right? How many people participated in live polls, and all these kind of things. You can sort of measure the engagement. And I love that adjective, the cognitive engagement, right? And you can work with these stats actually in real time. It happens and I've experienced it myself a few times, that the organizer decided to give out a small prizes to people who posted most of the questions, whose question was the top voted, right? Like you can gamify the whole experience, and even sort of motivate that cognitive learning, which is really awesome. So it doesn't have to be, the stats don't have to be only reported to, they can be nicely played with and worked with during the event.
And certainly from my experience, what we've seen from Grip customers is things like Clarion. I think I've mentioned this before. They have a vibe check which goes out on the app, and it's literally like, how are you feeling?
Oh, that's good.
Which is really simple question.
I love that.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
It's like the happy or not when you're in a bathroom at the airport and it's got the buttons, and you're just like, yeah. I love putting those in events because people love hitting buttons, because buttons are toys, and it gives people some fun.
Okay, right, I'm going to change gears. I don't want to end the webinar on a downer, but I do want to talk about negative emotions. So Liz, what negative emotions have you experienced, particularly around a previous president of America?
Well, so these emotions are in like there's the event organizer side of things where emotions come into play, but then there's the attendee side of things and trying to make sure that everything's still going smoothly and manage those things. From an event organizer side, what we had talked about in our pre-event was I once did an event where I had a former president as the keynote speaker, and he was an hour late for his keynote. And so we thought, well, it's all well and good. We'll just, have him do the keynote first and then the meet and greet. But we were told by his team, absolutely positively not. He gets his energy from the meet and greet. When he shows up, that is when your event shall begin. Like, freaking tastic. But luckily we had kind of been given a heads up by other people in the industry that this dude's always late to his keynotes. And so we had planned the agenda to have the expo hall times around then instead of breakout session times. So when something got disrupted, we could just send out the message to the expo hall folks that, hey, it's going to be open at a different time and people can come in. We had our people managed with, their human arrow kind of motif on going, hey, we're going to start the keynote an hour later. Everybody head to the expo and plan those things. And so I think managing that emotion, while we absolutely positively never thought he'd be late for our event because we were very special, he totally was. And so planning for it and then managing our own emotions when it came true, and then making sure that the attendees didn't feel like we were panicking. So this is the moment where they didn't have a clue that anything wild and crazy had really happened. We simply said, keynote time has changed. We're going to keep the expo open for a little bit longer, and then we'll bring people in. Keynote session has begun. It's time for you to come in. And so managing that so the attendees were like, oh, okay. Like none of them were paying real attention to the agenda anyway, but they were super excited to hear from him. So when the time came to get in there, we moved everyone in. So I think that's really it, managing your own emotions, because those emotions convey. If you can see the event planners running around with their hair on fire, then the attendees are like, what's going on? What's happening? Where's the ambulance? What's going on? So you want to maintain all of that.
Yeah, you handled that like a pro. And I also like the way you kept the president's name built in and anonymous. Very good. So Sarah came up with a question. Where does empathy fit in your equation? And are there times where a quiet room is the goal? So you don't want all of this crazy emotion. You want people just to be quiet. Where a speaker says something so profound, the audience is left speechless. Negative emotions are just as relevant as positive ones, and joy can be the most down emotion if you have an addiction problem. Well, I think you're right. I mean, sometimes you're right. We actually want to create some negative emotions. We want to get people to feel the pain so that then you can lift them up later on.
Absolutely. And Sarah, thank you so much for actually asking this question. I think it's a really important one. And as a speaker, as a moderator, guys, I'm obsessed with silence. Silence is an amazing thing. Like we are so scared of silence or of pauses because, oh my God, it feels so awkward to, stand in front of 200 people and be silent for 2 seconds. Well, there are many things that are actually happening, right? Like, okay, our heart is pounding, the time is going extremely slowly while we are on stage, but the audience doesn't perceive it in that way. But coming back to Sarah's question, silence is extremely powerful if we want the audience to reflect on what was said. If we want them to reflect on the maybe emotionally charged story or a really important question, a rhetorical question that have been actually posed by the speaker. So I think silence is incredibly important. I have witnessed a number of actually speeches where the audience was hanging on every single word, and the emotion wasn't really positive, but it was emotionally charged. One of such speeches was delivered by the divers that saved a group of students in Southeastern Asia. 45 minutes of a presentation, complete silence, and the whole presentation ended up in a standing ovation, even though you could have heard crickets. So I think using silence and as part of the speeches as a moderator or as a speaker is completely okay. And one more, let's get also practical. If we want the audience to do something, a group activity, or pairing them up to discuss something, people need silence. People need to think. And if we just start blasting the music during these moments of reflection or cognitive activity, it might be, distracting them instead of helping them. So again, as a speaker, as an organizer, as a moderator, if you become comfortable with silence and you make it your ally, you can uplift the whole experience.
And I also think managing that flow of energy throughout the event and knowing when to hype people up, when to let them come down, and when to not make them sad and cry. I was at an event where their closing keynote was a dude from a nonprofit that like everyone literally left the event crying, which would have been an amazing thing to happen earlier in the event where you could connect, but it was the last freaking keynote. It was miserable and sad. And we were like, what? But like, look at, I know Dr. Jess Garza and David T. Stevens are putting together this circadian rhythm serenity lounge experience at IMEX. So if anyone's going to IMEX in Las Vegas, they are building programming around your natural circadian rhythms and when you need calm and when you need uplifting. So thinking about your programs like that is pretty cool too.
Well, I think we all need that one in our lives. I need a bit of silence after this because there's so many truth bombs going into my brain. I need to just like take it in. All that's left for me to say is to thank my amazing panelists. Juraj, where can people come and hang out with you or find you online?
LinkedIn is the best place to hang out and to connect. You can see my name written right under my face. So it's Juraj Holub. Please reach out to me. Happy to get connected.
Thank you. And Liz, how do people come and find you?
I also hang on LinkedIn a lot, but hang with us in Club Ichi. We are Ichi.com.
It's very good. Yeah, get in there. And also get into this, our next webinar. Please do register, scan the QR code, come and join, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very emotional, like today's webinar. So all that's left for me to say is thank you to my brilliant panelists and everyone for joining. And I shall see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.